Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about raising funds for digitisation. This presentation is available on my SlideShare account, so you can grab it. No need to write frantic notes when I put up a slide with a few URLs on for places you can go and get funding from. So this will help you as you go through. Unfortunately, I have to leave at lunchtime. I have family commitments, so if you have any questions for me, I won't be in the Q&A session at the end of the day, so use Twitter and I will try and answer any questions that people have via that medium. So, and why am I here talking to you? What is it that I have to talk about? And I was thinking about this recently, and partly it's because being with the Department of Digital Humanities, and previous to that, being part of the founding group who built the Higher Education Digitisation Service, we've done a lot of digitisation projects and engaged in a lot of activities. At Digital Humanities at King's, we have over 5 million digital objects that we are accessing for various digital humanities academic projects. Those have been accessed over 200 million times in the last 5 years. Apart from that, in terms of funding proposals, we obviously have to fund all of those projects, and our research funding runs at about £2.5 million a year. And I've personally been involved in a large number of funding projects, whether that's through personal funding, private, heritage lottery funding, foundations, government funding, and I worked out that that's probably valued at over £100 million in the last 11 years, and I could also say that I probably bid for about £300 million and failed. And some of those are in a couple of really big, £30 million HLF projects. But a lot of them are the little stuff, the £10,000, the £5,000, the £300 projects funding. So there's lots of different ways to get here. So that's why I'm having a chat with you today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on two things, because we don't have a huge amount of time, and I don't want to take away from all the other speakers who are going to be telling you interesting things today. I'm going to focus on how, sources of funding and how to think about your approaches to those sources of funding. And I'm going to talk about your proposal and how you're going to shape that to reflect a need, and a specific need, as opposed to taking you through all the here's how to think about the money, here's how to think about the method, here's how to think about copyright and those things, because you've got lots of great speakers who are going to cover those things later on today. So getting started is about formulating your ideas, and what tends to happen and can be troubling is people think of digitalisation projects as being a monolithic thing, that you have to have everything worked out and you can only go to one place for the funding. One of the best pieces of advice that I was ever given, and I would give to you, is to think modular. Is to think about how can your project be broken down into parts, so that you can present it as a whole, if you've got that big fish who's going to maybe give you some funding. But you can also present it as these individual bits. This funder maybe might be interested in your preservation activities. This funder may be interested in the technological aspects of what you're doing. This funder may be interested in the educational aspects of what you're doing. And so giving modular opportunities. I've been involved with funding projects for digitisation activities in Africa, and often what we get is a funder saying, look, we won't put in the big funding for that activity, but if you can find someone who will fund that aspect of it, which we don't want to get involved with, we'll fund the education bit. We'll fund those educational materials being printed and sent out to 20,000 schools in Africa. That's what we'll fund. And so it's about creating, having a modular sense of your project. And it gives you the opportunity to then sort of shape your activity according to your need. Develop project and proposal outlines. And what I mean by this is a one-pager, which says about what's the need, why is it worth doing, what would you want to do. Now, there's a strategy here as well, because a lot of funding opportunities you don't have very much time to respond to. Often, the funding call comes out and you're thinking, 8 weeks? I've got to set up a whole collaboration and come up with a big project fund and a budget and all those aspects in 8 weeks. It's not enough time. So one of the best strategies that I've come across is the idea of don't wait for the funding opportunity. Think about what you would like to do. Write them down, short, one-pagers. Put them in your filing cabinet or wherever, and then as each funding opportunity comes out, you rifle through your 10 ideas and you find the one that is most likely to fit that. You've already done some of the key thinking and groundwork to get you there. And this also prevents you from just chasing money and making your projects fit to the funding. You need the funding to fit your project. Consider partnerships and collaborations. Funders love collaborations, but they take time and effort to build. So think about those things and identify potential funders and do some matchmaking, more in a moment. Prepare your proposal, target your proposal, and most importantly, if you are successful, make sure that you administer the grant well. Funders will fund people who have been funded before. Track record is one of the key aspects of getting funded. Our department at Digital Humanities has about a 1 in 4 success ratio for funding activities. So about 1 in 4 of our bids succeed. Most people have a 1 in 10 success ratio. And that's partly one of the reasons why the 1 in 4 is about track record. It's about funders trusting us when we say we can do something because of the track record of being able to do things before. So there's a number of different sources of funding. There's foundations, both public and private. There's public money, which might be government funding, local regional funding, lottery funding, research councils, corporate funding, private funds, personal wealth, community contributions, any other suggestions you might have, you can throw in on Twitter. There's some here that I would pick out. Foundations can be a very good source of funding, but you need to obviously spend a lot of time getting to know them, and matchmaking is essential. In terms of public money, the government funding, the research councils, it's become increasingly hard to get money for digitisation. There's money for let's build something incredibly innovative that involves digitisation. Let's do something else where digitisation is a side part of that activity. But the project funding that we saw, the £100 million that was spent of government money, £50 million of that in the New Opportunities Fund, that money over the sort of 15 years from 97 onwards, that will not come round again. There will not be another £10 million from JISC or from those opportunities out there. So we're in a more competitive environment. But Heritage Lottery Fund is a potential area. But the area that is often really underseen or underappreciated, particularly by museums, libraries and archives, is regional funding. Local and regional funding. Look to your region. It's very likely that you'll be competing against a much smaller pool. The money may not be huge, but it could well be that you are part of your community, you are part of the footprint of that community in your region and local area. And there may well be funds there that are filtering down from government, from Europe, from other activities that you can access that others can't, particularly if you're outside of London, if you're in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland, there are opportunities there. So there's a range of different sources, and this is just a screen grab of some directories of places you can go and look to find people who are interested in funding things. Many of the organisations that you might find, say, in the fundraising directory or in Turn to Us, for instance, the sorts of money there is going to be very small. It may well be that there are organisations out there which will give you £2,000. And you may think, what's the value of having £2,000? Well, the value of £2,000 is to get you on that ladder of funding, to show that you can spend that £2,000 well, can deliver a lot of outcomes for that money, and therefore show that you are a valuable person to someone bigger to give you money. It could be that it's the seed funding that allows you to do a feasibility study or a pilot to show a proof of concept. It may be the money that allows you to travel to meet partners or to get together a group of people to come up with innovative ideas. So don't turn your back on those small amounts of money. They're worth having. Then there's the big fish funders. Obviously, the Heritage Lottery Fund has been one of the biggest funders. You'll see upstairs the rather wonderful TAPE project, which had a considerable amount of funding from the HLF. It took them a long time. It took a big professional amount of effort. It wasn't easy for them to get that money, but they have done fabulous things with it. So go look at it and see it, and maybe ask them about the funding aspects as well, because there's some really interesting lessons to learn there along the way. And be very aware that you need to modify your approach according to who you are asking for money from. If you're going to a government funder, it is likely that, public money in any way, it is likely that it will be a strategy of filling in a form. And one of the things that you need to remember is that in those contexts, whether it's European funding, whether it's the UK government or other funders, research councils, they don't want to give you money. I know that sounds strange, because they're saying, here is an amount of funding, bid to us. But the reality is that anything that you're bidding to, I think the last bit of digitisation money I bid to, there were 48 bids, and only 7 of them got funded. So the first thing they've got to do is get that 48 number down to something manageable. Because the last thing that someone who is in the assessment activity wants to do is read 48 bids all the way through every single page, all 15, 30 pages maybe of those things. So the first thing they do is they look for the things that you've done wrong, and therefore they can put you on the no pile. So if you're looking, so your approach for public money is you have to be precise, you have to follow the rules, you have to do it the way they say. And then we get to private money or foundation money, as well. And those rules slightly disappear out the windows and new rules come into place. So with foundations and private money, you need to not mess about. You need to tell them how much money you want on the first page. Don't be shy. Tell them how much money you need. But also you need to be thinking, particularly with private money, maybe you need a professional to help you, because it's really hard asking wealthy people for money. It takes a certain skill, it takes a certain level of knowledge, you need to have a lot of insight, your matchmaking has to be excellent. And I've written a blog post here which reflects on that. It's indicative as well in our research that most American institutions have somewhere in the region of 10 times as much private funding as UK institutions do. And that's a cultural thing as well as a professional thing. But remember, basically, private money is about 3 things. It's the ice in their drink. So the ice is ideology, conscience, ego. One of those things are going to be the driving factor. You need to find it and press on those buttons. For funders, for foundations, they will have a strategy. They will have this is why we exist. This is why we exist, to give money out. If you're the Mellon Foundation, American Philanthropic, if you're the Carnegie organization, you will have a strategy which will be on their website, which will tell you this is why we give money out. Arcadia are giving money out for endangered archives, but they won't give very much money to UK or European organizations because they see us as having enough money to do those things for ourselves. So you need to find your matchmaking for those foundations. And when you've got that matchmaking, one of the things you're going to be required to do is put together a proposal. And as I say, government proposals are going to be to a very strict strategy, but other types of proposals are going to be a little bit more loose in terms of what you can do. But all of them are going to have the same feature, which is that your proposal is a written presentation to someone in order to gain its acceptance. You are writing an instrument of persuasion. You're trying to persuade someone to give you money to do that which you would like to do. So the functions of a proposal is about representing a project activity or function to undertake in response to a need. It's about the allocation of resources. It's about promising to do things in certain ways. And it's a plan that serves as a guideline for the implementation of that activity. And your funding proposal is going to fit into sort of 2 sections. And I'm going to focus on the green bit, the need. the proposed solution, the result of the solution, the market need and the audience needs. And of course, with any sort of digitalisation projects, in a sense, what we can also do is get very focused on the past, because we're digitising materials that already exist, that have a physical material existence. We're trying to produce those into a digital form. But it's very important that you both reflect on the past, but you're also planning for the future, that you're showing that there is a future use for this material, that it fits in with your future plans, it fits in with your collection development plans, it fits in with your strategy as an organisation. So when you're planning for Persuasion, one of the things you need to be thinking about, as Jeff was saying, is getting beyond, did we do it? Give us the money and we will give you 100,000 photographs, is a very unsuccessful funding strategy. Because you're not the only person out there with 100,000 photographs. Why your 100,000 photographs matter? You need to get beyond the resources that we need, which will lead to the activity, digitising those 100,000 photographs, to the outputs being, we have 100,000 photographs online, to answering questions about outcomes, and if possible, imagining potential impacts further into the future. Because your outputs is, if you accomplish your planned activities, then hopefully you'll deliver the amount of product and or service that you intended. Well, that's great. But if you're really competing against 40, 50 other potential people for that money, you have to say why you, why that content. And that is going to be best justified by showing outcomes. If you accomplish your planned object activities to the extent you intended, then your participants will benefit in ways that you can show, measure in some way. And especially if you can then show that this creates a level of change, that you've made something different, that you've enhanced people's lives or life opportunity in some way. So the tricky thing here is that you're engaging with cause and effect. What you're trying to do in your proposal is you're trying to say, if we do this, then we will have this effect. And of course, that is quite a difficult thing to do. So I'm not pretending that this is easy, but it is the way that you get funding, is by saying, if I do this, I will satisfy a need. That need will lead to benefits to the community, and those benefits to the community are worth you giving me money. And of course, as we can see, cause and effect sometimes has unintended consequences. So your statement of the problem, your need, your purpose is very important. You're describing the conditions in a certain place at a certain time for a particular group of people. You're describing what needs to change or what would be changed by your proposal. This is often the motivator. And if a funder agrees with the need, that can often get them hooked. To the extent that we've had projects where we've gone to a funder, we've expressed the need, they've come back to us and said, yeah, I really like the idea. The plan you've put forward, that's not good. But I like the idea, give me another plan. You know, if you can get them hooked on the need, on the thing that you are going to benefit your community with. Because in the end, almost all funders are out there because of their desire to instigate change in some way. They want to, if they're a research council, it's about increasing human knowledge and increasing public engagement with academia. If you're a foundation, it's about spending your endowment money well to the plans of however your foundation was set up. So if you're the Rothschild Foundation, you're going to be much more interested in Judaic-type collections, but you're also going to be interested in other types of endangered archives along the way. If you're set up with a technology brief, then you're going to want it to be about innovation and those sorts of engagements. So it's about which need do you have and how does that connect with those elements. And this is one of the reasons why I say sometimes local and regional funders can be a real source for you, because it may well be that you have a common need which is easier to express or understand, and they're just down the road, so you just go and have a chat over a coffee. So there needs to be a clear relationship to a mission and a purpose. Focus on a need in a broader community, not on yourself. If you're writing a funding bid that says, if we do this, this will be great because we will be a better organisation afterwards, that's fine. But if you say that for more than 5% of your bid, you will fail. 95% of your bid has to be, this is going to be good for someone else, not just good for us. has to be good for the schools in your location, has to be good for widening participation and engagement, has to be good for someone else, not just you. Make sure assertions are supported with evidence, and obviously, your needs should be expressed in a way that's consistent with your ability to do it. It's all very well saying, if we digitize these materials, we will instigate world peace. Are you actually going to be able to instigate world peace just because you've digitized materials? So make it easy to read, avoid jargon, assume a non-expert reader. Often we assume that the people who are going to be reading our bids know a lot about us, and they know a lot about the subject, and of course that may not necessarily be so. So focus on what you can accomplish, what need you have the solution for. What's unique about what you do? Remember, collaborative projects are very attractive to some funders, and funders love models. I don't know why, but they really love this idea that if they give you this tiny amount of money, what you will do is create something which will show everyone else how to do it. So if you say your solution can act as a model, then mention this, addressing the need on a larger level through the development of a model program. That's how I got £85,000 from a funder who doesn't normally give out that sort of money or for this sort of project to fund my research into the balanced value impact model, because it's a model. If I do this, then it becomes a way in which lots of other people can learn how to do impact assessment in cultural organisations with digital resources. So it was about bang for buck in that sense. So, objectives, strategies, outcomes. What will you accomplish? Remember, your objectives have to come from your need, measurable results, who will benefit and how, the result of an activity, not the activity itself at this point. You need to win them over before you start talking about how many scanners you're going to use and how many cataloguers you've got to build your metadata and things like that. And remember to be realistic. One of the things you don't want is for the worst thing to happen is that you get the funding. You actually want to be able to do the project. So remember that outputs are facts. So yes, it's going to be great that in your online history project of a random nature, that you can say that you've digitized this amount of items or number of users logged on or number of students who write essays, number of teachers used online resources. These are all interesting outputs, but they're not outcomes. You need to move on and remember that outputs may not tell us if our goals or objectives were met. I met a museum who was given a key performance indicator by a governmental body that said, you must have 80,000 images online. They didn't say there had to be different images. They didn't say there had to be good images. They didn't say the images had to have any benefit to anyone. So numbers alone aren't enough. You need to add some quality to your evaluation. So think about measuring outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Has our target audience changed or improved skills, attitudes, knowledge, behavior, status, or life condition in any identifiable way? If you can show those things. If you can demonstrate that the existence of your museum, library, or archive has an economic benefit to your community, these are worth stating. And just remember that there are a number of areas of impact. So I will leave you with this slide and say, when you're thinking about those measurable areas, there are a number of them. Don't be limited in thinking that it has to only be about a certain very narrow set of worthy ideals. There's a whole range of opportunities out there for you to find ways in which your collection will link with one of these areas of impact, and if you can express that need, that then gives you the hook, which gets you a long way down the road towards finding funding and a funder. Thank you very much.